this 1979 Fox body Mustang. Of course it doesn't run, and it's been off the road for 23 years. So I'm gonna try to get this thing fired up.
Derek Bieri fixed a car in the middle of a snowstorm with no help and no way out. The Mustang had not moved in over 20 years, but he made it run just before the ice took over. He left his old job and changed his whole life to follow this dream. But then, someone broke into his garage and stole a rare car part he worked hard to find. Brace yourself, he offered $55,000 to catch the thief. The garage that wouldn't die. Derek didn't build Vice Grip Garage to become famous. It wasn't supposed to start like this. He built it because he couldn't stop fixing things. Not just cars, problems, life, the ones nobody else wanted. The wrecks left to rot in barns, ditches, and silent driveways. The ones that should have been hauled to scrapyards and forgotten. But one car nearly broke him, and you'll see why, born in Minot, North Dakota, Derek grew up with wrenches instead of video games. On a farm, if it broke, you fixed it, or walked. No fancy replacements. No Amazon overnight shipping. His dad and grandpa knew how to make a dead tractor breathe again using wire, heat, and a little stubbornness.
Welcome back to Vice Grip Lodge. We're sorry it's taken so long, but we're finally going to answer the most commonly asked question ever, forever, ever in the history of Vice Grip Garage.
That kind of knowledge didn't come from books. It came from freezing fingers and mistakes that taught faster than school ever could. By the time he was a teenager, Derek could weld, rebuild engines, and fabricate parts from scraps that looked like trash. But he walked away from all that once, traded the roar of engines for the low hum of office lights, dress shirts, meetings, coffee breaks. He did the whole thing. And for a while it worked. A stable job, a steady paycheck, a daily commute that ate up hours of his life. Minnesota snow, the corporate cage, but under his skin, the itch never stopped. Every night after spreadsheets and calls, he'd head back into the garage. Grease-stained rags, rusted bolts, a half-dead carburetor that didn't want to cooperate. That was home. That was real. So in 2007, he flipped on a camera. Not for glory, just to show what fixing something really looked like. No edits, no polish, just busted knuckles, bad lighting, and a heart that couldn't quit. The videos were clunky, the audio hissed, but the message cut through. This was a guy who didn't care about looking cool. He cared about making a forgotten engine breathe again. The audience didn't arrive overnight, but they came. Slowly at first, then in waves. Not just gearheads, but people who understood what it felt like to be overlooked, left behind, or called worthless. Just like the cars he saved, his breakthrough came under layers of dust and peeling paint.
On this episode, we're going to take the 1969 Cancer Camaro and we're going to put in that really, really good stuff.
A 1969 Camaro Z28, buried in neglect, forgotten by everyone but him. He dragged it home, rebuilt it with patience and grit, and when it roared back to life, people watched. They didn't just see a car, they saw themselves in that fight. Vice Grip Garage exploded, not because of flashy tricks or clickbait, but because Derek brought something rare, truth. He didn't fake it. He didn't script it. If something broke, he showed it. If a part didn't fit, he cursed under his breath and figured it out. He made failure part of the process. He made rust beautiful. And then he made a decision most people wouldn't dare. He walked away from the suit, from the salary, from the illusion of safety. He left it all behind to chase a dream soaked in oil and duct tape. He moved his family from Minnesota to Tennessee, not for fame, not for money, but for time. Time with his wife, Jessica. Time with his 3 boys. Time to build something that mattered. Tennessee meant no more blizzards shutting down the shop for months. No more hour-long commutes stealing his days. Just open roads, southern air, and space to breathe. And with that freedom, the projects got bigger. The risk got scarier. The channel grew, millions watched, sponsors called, Motor Trend showed up with a contract in hand. By 2022, roadworthy rescues hit the air. A show that felt like Vice Grip with more cameras and shorter deadlines. The first car? A 1967 Mustang that hadn't turned over in 30 years. Derek didn't flinch. He never does. He rolled up his sleeves, dove in, and made it run.
This is a 1967 Ford Mustang, and it's been sitting in this exact spot for 28 years. The guy's got to do the right thing and just try to drag it out of here and get this thing running again.
No excuses, but success brings shadows. One video, just a joke, had Derek calling a battered 1965 Chevy C10 the lawsuit. Some viewers took it literally. Rumors flared. Was Vice Grip Garage in legal trouble? Was Derek facing a court battle? The answer was no, just a joke. But the internet doesn't like to fact check. It likes to whisper. A Mustang sat dead in a barn for over 23 years. The forecast called for a snowstorm. 4 to 6 inches. One shot to revive it and get out before the roads vanished under ice. No second chances. The car, a 1979 Fox body, quad headlights, hatchback, rough but not ruined. Just one big dent and some hail scars. That was the first surprise. The second, a VIN check revealed the car left the factory with a V8. Jackpot. Under the hood, chaos. Wires like spaghetti. Distributor frozen in place. Battery long dead. No spark, no fuel. Just silence. Derek dug in anyway. He heated the distributor, drowned it in oil, and fought it with a pry bar. Hours passed, hands froze, but finally, with a crack, it broke free. A new ignition system went in. Simple, strong, back to basics. Fuel lines, toast, brittle and cracked. Tank, full of varnish and bad decisions. He dropped it, cleaned it, and replaced everything. New pump, new filter. Prayers whispered with every bolt. Belts shredded, thermostat rusted. Radiator a gamble. He swapped what he could, raced the weather, wrenched like his life depended on it. Because at that moment, it did. It made it through snow and silence. But the hardest part was still ahead. 4 wheels in a blizzard. The thermometer barely cleared 8 degrees when Derek stepped into the frozen yard. No snow on the ground yet, but it was coming fast. The sky was that heavy white gray that never lies. He had maybe 12 hours before the roads turned to ice and the barn became a tomb. That meant 12 hours to resurrect a car that hadn't moved in 23 years. Not to polish it, not to tow it, to make it run. The Mustang looked better than it should have. A 1979 Fox body with straight lines, solid glass, and only one massive dent across the passenger side that looked like it had fought a parking barrier and lost. Minimal rust. Bubbling here and there, but nothing cancerous. The paint was hideous, slapped on in layers, peeling like old wallpaper. But it was cosmetic. The body had survived. That was more than he expected. The interior smelled like a mix of mothballs, gasoline, and regret. The original red had faded into a strange maroon salmon shade. Mice had definitely lived here. Shredded insulation, tiny droppings in the carpet. But the dash was uncracked. The seats were surprisingly intact. And behind the glove box, something magical. A factory build sheet, yellowed and torn, but legible. Whoever had owned this car once cared. That mattered. He checked the VIN. 5th digit, F, factory V8. No swap, no guesswork. This was a real one. That made what came next worth it. He doused it with penetrating oil, let it soak, then heat, the sizzle of rust breaking free. Still no movement. He tried again, torch, pry bar, tension, pop. A sharp snap echoed through the barn. The distributor came loose like a sword from a stone. Next came the ignition system. Derek tore out the old garbage and wired it in a Petronix flamethrower setup. Just one 12-volt line to fire the whole thing. Clean, simple, dead reliable. It wasn't pretty, but it didn't need to be.
Share on with you what I know about the rig, and then we'll scan our peepers on it, and then we got to start twirling some wrenches here if we're going to avoid that storm. I really don't want to get caught in the middle of that.
This wasn't a restoration. This was survival. He replaced the plugs. The old ones were fouled black, crumbling at the threads. The wires? Wrong kind, wrong size, another delay. Other parts run. He hated losing daylight, but there was no workaround. He drove out, grabbed what he needed, came back to the barn with snow starting to stick to his jacket. With the right wires in place, timing set roughly by feel, it was time to move to fuel. He dropped the gas tank. It weighed more than it should have. Inside, a thick syrup of varnished fuel, rust flakes, and failure. He dumped it out, flushed the tank, installed a new sending unit, a new filter, and a fresh pump. No time to test pressure. Just wire it, zip tie it in place, and pray. Back to the engine bay. He replaced the belts, most of which were cracked and frayed. Thermostat housing was fused, so he pulled it, found rust built up like coral reef inside, scraped it clean, swapped the thermostat, new gaskets, new hoses, new coolant. If the radiator held, he had a shot. If not, it would blow halfway through the test run. Then came the transmission, supposedly rebuilt, but there were no papers, no receipts, just stories. The shifter was jammed, wouldn't move out of the park. Derek slid underneath, fighting decades of grime. He freed the linkage by hand, lubed the connections, and felt the satisfying clank of gears re-engaging. Electrical came next. Headlights flickered, but worked. Brake lights, nothing. Turn signals, dead. He traced the wires, found rotted connections, cleaned the grounds, ran bypasses where needed. No time to chase every gremlin, just enough to be road legal for one night. Then the brakes. Dry master cylinder. Locked rear drums. He cracked bleeders, replaced lines, flushed fluid, bled the system solo. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't safe, but it would stop, probably. By the time the sun disappeared and the snow piled in inches, Derek rolled a fresh battery into place, bolted it down with frozen fingers, held his breath, and turned the key. Crank, crank, catch. The engine fired rough and loud, coughing up dust and bad memories.
So the story goes, or so I'm told, this is originally an Ohio car, and it's been sold as a project car multiple times since early 2000s, 2002. That's when it was last on the road, 23 years ago.
But it was alive. He ran to the back. Smoke poured from the tailpipe. Not white, not blue, just smoke. The kind that says, "Give me a second, I'm trying." He revved it lightly. The idle smoothed. The engine found a rhythm. 2 decades of silence ended in one furious heartbeat. The Mustang moved under its own power for the first time since George W. Bush was president. It rolled out of the barn slowly, tires crunching over fresh snow. The rear end slid slightly as he tapped the brakes, but they held. Lights on, exhaust rattling, engine rumbling. But the job wasn't over. He still had to get it out of Kentucky before the roads iced over, and the clock wasn't slowing down. He loaded tools in the trunk, shoved spare fluids behind the seat, checked the tire pressure, and hit the road. The Mustang hesitated, then surged forward. The rear end is loose on the slush. Visibility is low. Heater broken. But the engine held temp, the transmission shifted, and the gauges didn't lie. He had enough gas to make it. 10 miles down the road, the idle started to dip. The alternator wasn't charging. Classic. He turned off the lights, then the blower, then the radio. It was going to be a dark drive. But he kept going. At a gas station, he found an old battery charger and convinced the attendant to let him top up. 10 minutes of borrowed time. Enough. Back on the road. The snow was heavier now, inches turning into piles. But the Mustang crawled on, stubborn and loud, the way Derek liked it. By midnight, he had crossed the county line. By 1, he was at the state border. He pulled into the motel parking lot, cut the ignition, and listened to the ticking metal cool beneath the hood. 23 years of stillness replaced by motion. That's what Vice Grip Garage was about. Not speed, not shine, motion. The engine ran, the wheels turned, but something inside Derek was starting to stall. Spark, silence, and the road home. The parking lot was silent when Derek shut off the engine. Steam hissed quietly under the hood. The Mustang's idle faded into clicks and creaks as heat bled from the block. He stepped out and looked back. Snow crunched under his boots, thick now, at least 4 inches deep. The car had made it, barely. It wasn't pretty, but it had rolled under its own power across state lines in a blizzard after 2 decades of silence. That wasn't luck. That was work. At dawn, the world was blanketed white. He brushed snow from the windshield, checked the fluids, tightened a few bolts, and cranked the engine. The Mustang groaned, hesitated, then caught, a pulse of life in the cold. One more push, one more stretch of road. Back home, he pulled into the shop, shut it off, and stared at the car for a long minute. This wasn't just another project. It wasn't content. It was a symbol, a lesson in grit. He didn't touch it for a few days. Left it as it was, mud-caked, salt-stained, tired, like him. Vice Grip Garage kept moving. New projects, new rescues. A 70s square-body Chevy dragged out of a pasture with more holes than metal. A vintage Pontiac resuscitated with little more than prayer and starter fluid. A slammed ice cream truck that pulled eights at the strip. Each one is ridiculous. Each one is worth it. But behind the scenes, the pressure was building. More views meant more expectations. More sponsors. More timelines. More messages. The joy of the wrench was slowly being buried under logistics, contracts, and calendars. The garage felt smaller. The cameras are closer. The audience is always watching. The first episode brought him face to face with a 1967 Mustang that had been parked for 30 years. The rust was deep, the fuel was ancient, the brakes were locked solid, but he brought it back hour by hour, wrench by wrench. Viewers loved it. The feedback was overwhelming. The channel exploded. For the first time in years, Derek felt tired. Not physically, not from the long days, but something deeper. A heaviness that didn't go away with sleep or food. The kind of weariness that makes the sound of a starter motor feel distant instead of exciting. He ignored it at first, pushed through. That was always the way. If something didn't run, you figured it out. If something felt off, you tightened the bolts, checked the spark, and kept going.
Let's see what we got. That is bone dry. No surprise there. Test the blood stick for the shift machine. Oh, it's actually fairly red.
Until one morning, he didn't even want to open the garage door. No announcement, no farewell video, just fewer uploads, fewer all-nighters. A full inbox left untouched, and an engine that sat in silence while the noise faded. And in that quiet, he remembered why he started. It was never about followers, algorithms, or views. It was always about saving something. He walked back into the garage, not for content, for himself. A wrench in one hand, coffee in the other. That's all he needed. He pulled the cover off the Mustang, the one from the storm, and started tearing it down properly. No rush, no pressure, just him and the machine. The build went slow, thoughtful, detailed. He restored the rear end, rebuilt the brakes, upgraded the suspension, stripped the paint, found metal that needed love, welded it by hand, every panel, every bolt, every hose. It all mattered again. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. Meanwhile, his wife Jessica kept the operation running. She was never in the spotlight, but she made the channel possible. Orders, parts, emails, gear, all of it passed through her hands. When Derek wanted to quit, she reminded him of the community they'd built. When he needed space, she protected it. Their 3 boys watched it all, grew up in the shop, learned the sounds of ratchets before the alphabet. The youngest Bentley launched Little Grip Garage. Go-karts, mini bikes, old motors that coughed to life under tiny hands. He was already building more than machines. He was building confidence. Not just the builds, but the bond. Vice Grip Garage wasn't just one guy in overalls yelling into a camera. It was a family. It was a story. It was the belief that even when something's been broken for decades, it still deserves a chance. After the brief silence, Derek returned stronger. The uploads picked back up, but they were different now. More focused, less frequent, more deliberate. He wasn't chasing the grind anymore. He was setting the pace. Someone broke into the shop. Not random, not an amateur. They knew what they were after. A rare carburetor disappeared. Valuable, rare, irreplaceable. Derek didn't get mad. He got serious. He and Jessica offered a $55,000 reward for any information. It wasn't about the part, it was about principle. The outpouring of support was instant. Thousands of fans reached out. Tips, offers, help. The Vice Grip community showed up in force. And that's when Derek knew. This wasn't just a garage anymore. It was something bigger. He kept building. A 1972 Dodge Charger that hadn't moved since the Reagan administration. A 60s GMC Suburban found half swallowed by the woods. a Vietnam-era military truck turned highway cruiser. Each rescue was a message, a reminder that people like cars deserve more than to be forgotten. It got a new lease on life. Derek repainted it himself. Not flashy, just clean. He upgraded the drivetrain, strengthened the chassis, tuned it until the idle purred. Then one morning, he took it out on the highway and opened it up. 80 miles an hour, then 90, then 100. The engine didn't stutter. The steering held. The old rust bucket screamed across the asphalt like it had something to prove. What if every car Derek brought back to life wasn't just a project, but a message from the past reminding us not everything broken should be left behind? Leave your thoughts in the comments, like, and subscribe for more.